to my left is Richard Wolffe, who is Vice President and Executive Editor of MSNBC.com. He is a political analyst, a best-selling author in the New York Times bestselling list. He has covered Barack Obama at length and also covered George Bush when he was running for governor.
That's how old I am.
I want to hear about all the secrets. You also are an on-air talent, and I believe you're involved with The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell and Politics Nation with Reverend Al Sharpton. You're a very busy gentleman.
But I'm here, so that's good.
Yes, so we're excited to hear what your responsibilities are, and we'll get back to that in a second. Marty Roberts, of course, who's been in our industry for a very long time, spearheads thePlatform. He's the co-CEO, and which is a company owned by Comcast, and they're basically the backbone, I think, of a lot of the online video distribution that's going on. There's so much more work that I'm sure that you'll discuss in a moment, and you're deeply involved in the TV Everywhere agenda. Alix Baudin is the SVP and General Manager of Digital Product and Operations for Scripps Networks Interactive. And I really appreciate that Scripps, like NBC, you guys, Channing is often here at the event, that you're willing to participate and speak and be part of the community. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I mentioned NBC earlier as well. And you're in charge of many of the lifestyle-oriented content platforms and channels, including HGTV, DIY Network, Food Network, Cooking Channel. It goes on and on and on. You guys, you own everything. And finally, Zane Vella, who I mentioned before, is the CEO and founder of Watchwith, and who won one of our leadership awards this last June. And Watchwith is an innovative platform that manages metadata and works with broadcasters all over the country, including Bravo, USA, Fox, and Sci-Fi. And you are taking advantage of such things as ACR, which not many companies are. And there's so much more that you have to talk about. So let's talk a little bit about what NBC is doing. Richard, and maybe each of you, well, actually, Richard and Alix, if you could each go into very quickly what your TV Everywhere offering is. And
excellent.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
So MSNBC, if you don't know it, is part of NBC News Group, and MSNBC, even within the NBC Universal family itself, has a long tradition of being part of the digital universe, because the MS, for people who don't know, was represented by Microsoft. So it started out in this era when people quaintly called it convergence. The truth is, by the time we got to convergence, the two sides had parted ways. We bought out Microsoft as the joint venture side of the digital operation for MSNBC just 2.5 years ago. And at that point, we really fully could enter the TV Everywhere space. Because until then, we were bound by all sorts of agreements that predated anyone's conception of TV Everywhere. So we relaunched MSNBC as a website that was really much more aligned with the cable channel just over a year ago. And at that point, we also launched our first full TV Everywhere offering, live linear and full episode VOD. Truth is, at that point, we like many organizations, put out a TV Everywhere offering that fulfilled all the requirements of TV Everywhere, except for the user's needs. So we are actively at work, actually involving Marty as well.
Let me actually frame this. By the way, this is really, to some extent, a focus on the platform, because you're all working with the platform, and we wanted to find out, how.
What are they doing?
Well, we want to find out behind the scenes what exactly is happening, and get
so we're reimagining and rebuilding that as we speak. When I say as we speak, I really mean that.
Sure. So, can everybody hear me? Perfect. So on our end, Scripps Network, we started our TV Everywhere journey
Like, hold
probably...
it closer to you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Much better. Okay. We started our TV Everywhere journey, I would say, approximately mid-2013 with the launch of 5 of our 6 brands, HGTV, DIY, Cooking Channel, Travel Channel, and Food Network. And over the course of the last 18 months, we've effectively plotted to make sure we've expanded the distribution both on iOS, Android, and web. And so the goal in the near term is really try to distribute our content as widely as possible and on as many platforms as possible. And what's to come is really trying to fulfill on that multi-platform strategy, which is fairly difficult because you have to deal with an experience by device, by platform, based on different business terms with your MVPDs, et cetera. But we're working through that.
Well, Marty, can you tell us a little bit about what you are doing in the back end to enable both of these services and what the differences are between them, what the challenges are between the two, please?
Sure. I mean, there's a whole bunch of, there's lots of challenges, which speaks to the vendors that are out there. I think that the back end and what we're doing and what we help big media companies do is to get their content in all the right formats for all the devices that you want to target. Job number 1. Manage all the metadata so that people can actually find and explore and uncover that video. And we're working with partners like Watchwith to then even further enhance the video with additional metadata and content. And then manage all the business policies around that content. So as these guys sign deals with different MVPDs, whether it's TV Everywhere or increasingly we're launching over-the-top services, they're coming with different types of business policies that all need to be modeled and enforced at the time of playback. And so that's what we do behind the scenes. I think that, to your earlier point, Richard, I think what we're now seeing is a second evolution of TV Everywhere. The first generation got out and fulfilled the contracts of what TV Everywhere was all about and the agreements between the MVPDs and the networks that were providing them content. But oftentimes they were actually negotiated by teams that were used to negotiating TV rights and really didn't understand some of the nuances underneath the technology and what was possible. And so kind of the consumers kind of got left out of that experience where TV Everywhere was kind of siloed off to the side. And so what we're now seeing a lot happening is companies are coming back and really developing much richer applications that still include that TV Everywhere authenticated content, but as part of a broader experience that folds in lots of extra content, lots of extra metadata. In this case, it's the recipes and things like that come along with the Cooking Channel and the Food Network and all that content. In the case of news, it's all about how do we get that content out both as quickly as possible and make that available, but also with other contextual content that comes around it. And so that's how do we link all these videos together, and metadata is a great source for that. So it's funny because, metadata is probably the least sexy topic you can talk about, but it is such a strategic imperative now to get into. Well, thank you. Now there's 2 of us, and so that's the idea: is how do we link all this content together to create a better consumer experience?
Well, I mean, the NBC and Scripps are going to be much far advanced than a lot of smaller independent producers. And you have a lot of help with a professional company like Watchwith to come help you, generate all kinds of new services and ideas. But it's still, I think, my guess, a struggle to try to get all of the teams in sync, all of your teams in sync to figure out the strategy involved, planned to figure out how to take advantage of the platform, how to take advantage of the services that the platform are offering. How do you all, separately perhaps because you don't consult either, what NBC is doing with Scripps, but how do you Zane and Marty, how do you talk to these companies about how you tell them what they can do, what are the possibilities, how is it received, how much of a sort of mental leap do they have to make, and in these situations, how close are they to realizing the potential of the platform and Watchwith, the power behind your 2 services? There's a lot of questions built in there.
I'm going to try and knock off a couple of those.
Okay.
I can't guarantee I'll get them all.
Okay. But you know where I'm going with that, right?
I think so. I think the shortest answer to that question really goes back, I think, to what Alix said, and that's blocking and tackling, just actually trying to manage the complex matrix of platforms and devices is a huge job, right? So literally just trying to get the video prepared, managed on a daily basis, combination of on-demand and linear, right? It's an exponentially complex problem. And so
even beyond, on my list is commerce and all kinds of the things. We're still
it's absolutely true,
dealing
but
with the formats.
Well,
all
I
the time.
think over the last 18 months, a lot of those issues around the basics have actually been addressed, particularly around dynamic ad insertion. Like, it's come a long way. It's actually a smooth consumer experience now. And I think that people are just starting the programmers are just starting to turn to the question of content enhancement in order to do things like, namely, drive increased viewing time, very important, right? To increase viewing time, start testing whether or not the availability of extras or some kind of enhanced experience actually leads to longer viewing times. But the other really important part is figuring out new ad units, right? So we've now, I think if you heard on the panel earlier this morning, we're at 4, a DAI load is typically 4 ads. Some people want to push it to 6. I think a lot of consumers are starting to reject that. It's just, you don't expect it in online video. And so I think what people are starting to now look for are other kinds of ad units, other monetization that you can bring to the surface in video that works at scale. And so to shift to the second part of Tracy's question, the platform is one of the, I think, most innovative companies out there that has actually created a very robust plugin structure for the player. So that if you're a company that's out there using the platform's player, then they literally have made it easy for a third party like Watchwith to come along and create a third-party plugin that exists in the MPX console. And so it's as simple as going to a pull-down menu, identifying a plugin, and then the platform handles all of that distribution of that enhanced player out to the ecosystem so that a company like Watchwith can come along and provide tools and other services that networks can use to enhance that video. And I think it's going to take things like that. They're very technocratic, like a plugin, my God, really? But it really takes that because nobody in the industry has time to start that kind of software development from the ground up. Like if partners aren't willing or able to go out there and invest and create that productization first, there's no time for the experimentation. And hopefully that's where we are now, that 2015 will lead to that kind of experimentation.
Alix, where do you feel that you are in terms of being able to make that leap forward from just worrying about ad formats or getting the formats right, figuring out how to monetize through advertising? Are you ready to?
It's still early days. I think the first part was actually stitching. Even just stitching ads is still a difficult task when you have Chromecast and other new platforms come on board. So the block and tackling is still quite a bit of work. As well as you have to look forward to what Zane mentioned, new products, et cetera, but there's still quite a bit of work that has to be done in terms of just ad stitching. There's still quite a bit of work that has to be done in terms of client serving versus client-side serving versus serving on the back end. There's still a lot of those types of decisions that are being actually discussed internally. What do you do in terms of creating the best experience? There's still discussions in terms of latency. How do you deal with latency and actually quality of delivery to a consumer? I really do believe we're still in the early days. I think we have probably 2015 to work through the block and tackling and the basics, and I think 2016 will probably be, and beyond that, you'll actually start seeing things really fully come together. That's my.
But are we always playing catch up? Because we've been talking about this stuff for years. Why are we still having to, work all this through? Marty, what's coming down the pike as far as making this whole process frictionless? I'm assuming that's your goal.
Yeah, so I think that there are there's still big technical hurdles that we need to get through. And I think that I think advertising is a good example of that, where most of it's working, but there are, again, new formats that we should be introducing to really take advantage of the medium, as well as even just things like client-side ad insertion today. There's ad blockers that are out there, and so there's an arms race that's going on with the browsers and these ad blockers. We have to work through that as an industry to keep and maintain that revenue source for us. I'd say the second thing that we are really finding is that in terms of technical hurdles, is that the business models are shifting a lot. I think you talked about OTT as a new entrant into the marketplace, and a lot of broadcasters and network families are starting to take content as their own subscription package that's outside of their affiliate relationships to the market and develop a better relationship with that consumer. And so that's the third thing I would say, is that what we're seeing a lot of investment in is better ideas around developing a one-to-one relationship with that audience base. And so the idea is that over time, now I can understand, it used to be, as a media company, I had two customers. I had advertisers and I had pay TV operators. And my audience was something that was kind of determined by, this is the type of program we're targeting to reach this demographic. But now we're in a new world where we can actually start to establish a one-to-one relationship with that consumer and bring them on as a fan or even as a paying customer over time. And that's going to improve the entire business model, where our advertising can get better as a better targeted environment when I know more about that customer, and our relationship with that audience can get better because I can promote that next piece of content that they're really interested in that's contextually relevant for them. So we see definitely challenges, lots of challenges coming up around the advertising model, still challenges in the TV over authentication model for sure, but also the new opportunity/challenges. How do I get to know my audience on a one-to-one basis and do that in a way that's constructive and healthy, with that audience base? And so that'll be a big challenge for us going forward.
Do you have to hire an entire new team to just study that opportunity? Because it seems like you all are stretched to some extent, just trying to keep up with all of the new emerging platforms. I don't mean stretched in a bad way, because it's keeping you busy. But it's almost like there's not enough time to breathe, to be able to figure out how to think up these new ideas. Maybe you need an entirely new team to do that, and to figure out ways to differentiate your service with the services that you have now that you're working on, while you're working on improving and serving all of these formats to all of these new OTT platforms. Is that an accurate?
We're seeing it come from a place we didn't expect. We're seeing it start to come from the brand managers. So where in many cases, like, we're technology and product people, right? We're tasked with bringing product to brands or bringing product to brand managers. Mm-hmm. It's then the brand managers who come back and they have an idea. They know their audience, they know their brand, they know their product, and they say, would it work? And we really need those brand managers, the people who are charged with understanding how to serve the audience really well, to be those fire starters.
So they need to be part of this discussion.
So I think I'm one of those people.
Okay.
And I'm certainly driving
you
Marty's team crazy, because we're pushing it. We are. I think there's been a profound shift in the last 6 months, I'll be honest, because it's not just people at my level. It is up and down the chain of command in terms of, I think there's been a shift in personal behavior, personal consumption habits, which you could say, you asked, why are we playing catch up? Well, maybe some people needed to play their own catch up in their own lives, or see other people adopt these products around them, and then start to change their own conceptions of where their business and their brands could fit into that world. But I do think having other teams do this stuff has been one of the problems we've faced all along. And that's why TV Everywhere products remained at a remove. The best thing we have right now is that brands are embracing these different products, different platforms, and then feeding that back in. And this is the really creative part, feeding that back into what it means for editorial, what it means for the brands, what it means for their relationship to their audience. And that's where you get the real creativity coming. It's not enough for us to create wonderful products with great features and functions unless it's fully embraced by the editorial side, because if that doesn't happen, the audience won't embrace it either.
To what extent, Marty and Zane, do you get to be involved in the discussion at this stage where you're trying to figure out what the brand manager wants to do? Do you pitch it to them? Does he contact you when he wants to do something? What is the sort of order of events? How does that?
It's a little bit of both. I think that, and it depends on the organization and what their priorities are. We definitely have strong networks that come to us with an idea about what they believe their experience should be, their video experience should be on all these devices. Others come to us and ask us to pattern match. And what's working in other places and what can we help with, and we're happy to share that. What I find is that, the interesting thing is that although technically, media companies are kind of competing against each other, I guess, for ad dollars, at the same time, I find a much more collaborative environment where, number one, it's an incredibly small market, so never make a mistake, because everybody talks to everybody. And number two is this idea where right now nobody has the right answer, and so we see a lot of collaboration and a lot of sharing where things are, working across all the different networks, even within network families, like in the NBC family, within the Scripps family, but also across even network families where you'll see the Turner guys come out and say, this is what's working for us, and share that with others around metadata or authentication. And everybody benefits from that cross-industry collaboration, because ultimately we all need this to work, and so we're kind of all in it together. So.
Watchwith has actually had to, we have to treat our customer relationships on two levels. We have to have our, in a sense, master relationship with at the network group level. And then we actually have to have separate relationships, often involving embedded folks, like people who literally go with a badge and work as part of those teams on a regular basis at the brands, because there's so little, in many cases, coordination between the two. And also the timelines and time frames are so condensed that people want, an idea comes up and they want to move on it in 2 weeks. Like there's very little time. So having people actually in many ways embedded in those teams ends up being really critical, so that they're listening to what those executives want to do, and then can almost immediately respond. It's the only way it's been seems to have worked well.
I was prepared to do a whole hour, but I forgot. Actually, it was a short session. But very quickly, Alix and Richard, can you tell us something that you're doing specifically with Watchwith and the platform that you're proud of? Something that is working really well, something that is successful, that is allowing you to differentiate your service and allow you to grow beyond just chasing your tail. And just because we're all doing that, tell me what you're able to do that you're excited about.
From a Scripps perspective, we're not working with Watchwith, not yet, anyway. In terms of the platform, quite frankly, the platform has actually helped us from a time-to-market perspective, really allow us to scale our experiences across multiple brands. Going back to block and tackling, from an enterprise perspective, rolling out TV Everywhere experiences across multiple brands, across multiple devices, experiences that you want to constantly evolve is quite a bit of work. And so just having a great partner to help us facilitate the time-to-market aspect, as well as managing the features and functionality, as well as looking out forward to OTT, et cetera, has been extremely valuable.
Just a year ago, we were the first of the NBC News brands to move to the platform player. That has been so successful that all the other brands have moved over or are in the process of moving over. We're working, as I probably suggested, on some pretty ambitious projects with the platform right now. I think when you take it to the next level with a partner like the platform, there are so many opportunities. Metadata makes it sound extremely dull, but it is. It's up to us what we define as that, and we're a community play. So we have, as MSNBC, work very closely on how you bring that community to life around video. And I think we're at an early stage, but a very exciting stage. And all I can say is stay tuned, because I hope to announce it today, but I couldn't. So.
I know, you're a day ahead of something big.
Very close.
We had a story here. Okay, well, again, I think metadata is interesting, because that's really going to I have not slept in 24 hours, is going to differentiate the service that allows it to happen, will differentiate it. You guys are going to have to grow your teams, I think, and get the heads of your networks to prioritize it. I expect to see some projects that we can report on this next year, please. Take a risk, stick your neck out, do something different, even if you're going to have to redo it again because you have to do it on 10 new platforms in 2 months. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.